listeners, and welcome to Privacy Chats with Rachel and John. This is a podcast for privacy professionals and enthusiasts. I'm John.
And I'm Rachel. We're your hosts today, and we're going to talk about deepfakes.
Yeah, so deepfakes kind of sit in the intersection of some previous chats that we've had. So we've had, I think, at least two, maybe even three chats about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And then just a few episodes ago, we talked about imposter scams or impersonation scams. So deepfakes is a process that combines both of those by using artificial intelligence to bring imposter scams really to the next level, by using technology to look or sound like a person who's being impersonated. So the impersonation isn't limited to email or text or something like that. It's the actual, picture, video, audio of a real person.
Yeah. And I mean, deepfakes are a great thing to revisit because of the discussions around generative AI, but it's not exactly breaking news anymore. What has shifted, though, with those developments is how indistinguishable these models are of other people's faces, where they've become hardly inseparable from the real thing.
Right.
Back in 2020, I remember there was a Channel 4 in Great Britain. They had a deepfake of Queen Elizabeth, if you remember that, John.
I do, yeah.
It got a ton of media attention, and I thought it was very successful in how it exposed this as a potential problem to, continue proliferating through society. We'll link the video in the comments, but there was a lot of manual preparation and coordination going into that one. If you watch the video, they're setting up the green screens and
Right.
just playing Queen Elizabeth, who was nowhere near her age, looked nothing like her, right? They're coaching her and she's doing the same body movement. And compared to now, with where the advancement of AI is in, supporting deepfake technology, it's made that whole process basically immediate. It's far faster with a fraction of the resources.
Right.
One CBC video cited something like 2 minutes for a specialist to really create, real video testimonies of people like Obama and Justin Trudeau and Morgan Freeman. We'll link that video in the comments as well. But it's amazing how far this stuff has come, and I'm glad we're revisiting it.
Yeah, I agree. Those are like great examples about this. And I was looking when I was doing some research to see like what's the new information that's out there, and I stumbled across a resource at Northwestern University, and it's a database, a political deepfakes incident database that's being put together by a few of the researchers there: Christina Walker, Daniel Schiff, Kaylin Jackson Schiff. But it tracks incidents of deepfake technology that are being used in the political arena. So that's one of the use cases we should talk about.
Yeah, how large is a database for something like that?
So as of I think yesterday when I was looking at it, there were 352 lines in the database, but there was some anomalies because it showed incident numbers and it showed 421 of them. So there was some inconsistencies. I don't know if that means that they had some that they took out for some reason. But I also don't necessarily agree that everything that was in their database were really deep fakes.
Yeah, and I'm a little privy to this as a problem. Like deepfakes have likely a very generous and broad interpretation, and the detection of them could throw you a lot of results or not very many. And I don't think 300, 400 some is very many to begin with. I mean, you go on social media for 5 minutes within a certain age, and you'll see so many fakes of celebrities and other public figures that are very clearly being used for comedic effect.
Yeah, and I gotta wonder if like comedy and those types of use cases, are those really deep fakes? Like it's just the use of technology. A couple of examples from the incidents that I was reviewing. I'm not going to pretend that I reviewed all, 352 of them, but I did kind of pick a few of them to look at. And one of them was clearly a parody. So it showed, I think it was Trump and Biden side by side, like they were in a debate. But they were both clearly saying things that neither one of them would say, which is actually surprising to think that there are things that some of those people wouldn't say. But it said on the bottom that I think it was titled AI Presidential Debate, and it even said parody. So like, you know, they were acknowledging that it was a parody. They were just kind of making fun of things.
Yeah.
Another one contained, it was actual footage of Nancy Pelosi, um, but and she was something that she had, you know, I don't know, made a mistake or said something wrong, or she got confused in an interview or something like that. And she didn't, you know, she looked kind of foolish in it in the original video. But what they did that was called a deep fake in this database was they took the picture of her and they superimposed it over a picture of the sun. Like, remember that scene from
Like, with the
Teletubbies?
baby, the rising
Right.
baby.
Yeah, but apart from like changing the background of what her picture was, the video was exactly the same. It was her saying something that she actually said, and they just made her sound, you know, kind of a little bit even more foolish than she was in the original. But I don't know that that's a deep fake. And another one on a more serious topic, it depicted Paris and the Eiffel Tower, and it showed like missiles being launched at the Eiffel Tower. And I think it was trying to make some political point about like if this something like this was happening in a European capital other than the Ukraine, the response would be different. But you know, again, I don't think anyone's going to be fooled into, like, we all know that the Eiffel Tower wasn't actually shot with missiles from a fighter jet or something like that. So
Right.
so I think that the deception really should be one of the factors in this thing.
Yeah, and I mean, for one, I love the fact that you went into even those videos yourself. Like, I kind of giggle because I've been behind the screen for deep fake comedies, not on it, but like watching it
Yeah.
come across my social feeds, and they're just outright ridiculous. they're
Yeah.
they're just absurd.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit entertaining doing the some of the research. Although I did go pretty deep into the rabbit holes. I might have spent a little bit longer preparing for this one than I normally do. But you know, overall, I just want to make sure that we're not raising alarm bells about deep fakes without having a better understanding of like what is the real prevalence of them, and you know, what is the definition of what we're looking at for deep
Yeah.
fakes.
So what do official sources say deepfakes are?
So I looked, you know, looking for a definition. I started off with dictionary. So the just a simple Google dictionary search, and Oxford Languages describe. I'm going to read it verbatim here. It says that deepfake is a video of a person in which their face or body has been digitally altered so that they appear to be someone else, typically used maliciously or to spread false information. So that was one. There was a separate one from Merriam-Webster that said it's an image or recording that has been convincingly altered and manipulated to represent someone as doing or saying something that was not actually done or said.
Yeah,
So
just like official definitions will have, there are some subtle and important nuances there, I think.
yeah, agreed. But I actually like the second one that I read because it includes both video and still images and audio recordings, because I think all of those should be part of it. Um, but I also like the Oxford definition because it specifically includes the phrase typically used maliciously to spread false information. And I think that malicious use of it is the thing that we should be wary of. Like going back to that incidents database that I was talking about, you know, I don't think it's necessary to point out things that are parody or hyperbole or, you know, comedy or rhetoric or whatever. If it's clear to the person viewing it that it's fake, then I don't know that you're trying to deceive anyone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, by that latter definition, I've seen plenty of deep fakes I've mentioned before, and I've never ever mistaken them as credible information. They're just very pop culture and contextually oriented, and like I said, bizarre at times. At the same time, I don't want to discredit the fact that there's stuff I'm not exposed to in the world, and the maturity of these models convinces me that it wouldn't be impossible to develop deepfake technology in the purpose and pursuit of deceiving people on what are not actual facts.
Yeah, and yeah, I think the reality is that other people might be more easily deceived than you. Like, you're a very smart person and you're,
I'm
you
one
know,
of a very
savvy with.
large population. That's right.
Well, it's true, but other people aren't going to be as savvy with it. So you know, I don't overall, but there's definitely a problem to be solved here because it's going to get harder and harder in the future to recognize the differences. And I did look. I found in my research in May 2023, so it's over a year ago now. there was a hearing on Capitol Hill, and Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal, he opened this hearing with an audio recording, but it was an artificial intelligence speech of that sounded like him. And he was really trying to make a point, but the words that he was speaking in it were created by ChatGPT, and the recording, the audio of him saying those things from ChatGPT was AI.
So whole
So
package.
none of it, the whole package, none of it was him. And he was, he was really trying to make a point. And the article that I read about this in Politico said that and this is a quote, that the recording outlined the reason for this hearing and warned of when technology outpaces regulation. So they're kind of recognizing that there's regulation is needed there. So
Do you agree with that general sentiment, though, with the message Blumenthal was communicating?
I think I do, and we've talked before, and I know that I often lean towards like industry should be able to regulate itself, and we don't. Well, let's not turn to regulation from government entities so quickly. But in this case, there is no industry here that can regulate itself. This, like, the cat's out of the bag. This is technology that's out there for anyone to use. So yeah, the regulations are needed. Unfortunately, there are some out there. I did in my research, I found there was an article in Reuters, Thomson Reuters. I'll give credit to Michelle M. Graham, the author of this, in June 2024, and talked about a number of federal regulations. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's one in 2020, the Identifying Outputs of Generative Adversarial Networks Act, the Deepfake Report Act of 2019, the Deepfakes Accountability Act, I don't have a year for that, the Defiance Act of 2024, which would improve rights to relief for individuals affected by non-consensual activities involving intimate digital forgeries and for other purposes. So there's some federal regulation that's out there. I think more is needed because these seem very kind of niche.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and also I feel like the threat of misinformation generally is a very bipartisan concern here in the US.
Yeah.
And that leads me to think it's also a state interest as well. So what's in that space?
So I found a few, actually the same article from Reuters. So there was some those specific current regulations in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, South Dakota, New Mexico, Indiana, Washington, Tennessee, Oregon, and Mississippi. So that's a fairly lengthy list. And pending regulation in Florida, Virginia, California, and Ohio. However, and you and I have talked about this, if you've got different regulations in different states, then how are people and companies that work across all of them to wrap their heads around that? But some of these regulations were very specific. So the laws in Texas, New Mexico, Indiana, and Oregon were all just about the use of deep fakes in elections or in political campaigns. So that's the only focus that they had. The laws in, let's see, Florida and South Dakota were about the use of deep fakes to depict minors. So I think that's far more important than protecting elections. Protecting children is, we've talked about that before, how important that is. My favorite one, so you're gonna have to listen to the name of this and pull the acronym out of it because I love it.
I'm ready.
It's from the state of Tennessee, bit of a clue there. And the title of the law is Ensuring Likeness, Voice, and Image Security Act. Did you get the acronym?
It's in front of me. It is the Elvis Act.
Elvis Act from Tennessee. I just love that. But I actually like the essence of the law. So, and this is a quote from the same article. But the broader scope is to prevent the unauthorized creation and distribution of a person's photograph, voice, or likeness, and includes liability for persons who distribute, transmit, or otherwise make available technology with the primary purpose of unauthorized use of a person's photograph, voice, or likeness. So it's very broad, and I think that one from Tennessee, they seem to do a better job than the other state regulations.
Yeah. Although broad, you can argue there's maybe some enforcement challenges with that, but it leaves no ambiguity for things that aren't, especially when we're talking about someone's likeness and the intent to distribute. it would feel uncomfortable to come across my own person, given that I'm not a celebrity and I don't want to be out there saying things that I
Right.
don't mean or want to say. Heck, they could be training on our videos as we know it on YouTube, right? But that's not my purpose of having these chats on YouTube, right? It's to communicate privacy information. So we kind of covered a lot about misinformation and its threat to election periods, which I think is
Yeah.
super important. Um, However, we're talking about broader use cases and the advanced nature of generative AI itself. Agnostic of use cases, political campaigns cannot be the only one. We have humor. What else do we have?
Yeah, they're not at all. And when I started looking into that, because there was a particular place that I was trying to get to, but I stumbled across a thing, and the first article was from a few years ago, but it indicated that 96% of deepfakes uses were for pornography. And that most of those were for superimposing faces of celebrities onto the naked bodies of models or actresses from that industry. Um, and at first, I was like, okay, I don't want to deal with pornography stuff here. It's not a whole
Yeah, I'm
privacy
kind of
thing,
like,
right?
no duh. Like,
Yeah, right. So, but then there's another part of it that's the same kind of use case that's really more alarming, and that there's a lot of cases of children being victimized by this. So uh, what? Oh, I think I'm off track here, but I'm going to keep going. So, what's happening in some schools is that students presumably are taking pictures of their classmates and probably usually young teenage girls, and then running them through these deepfake things and creating pictures that make them look nude, and then posting them on social media, um, which is terrible. Like it's victimizing their classmates in a time that's already difficult. I mean, it's difficult for everyone, but I think it's
incredibly
it's even
hard.
more difficult for girls, right? So it's just alarming. It's shy, and I didn't go too deep into that, but that's something that is horrible, and it's beyond like a celebrity's face being put on somebody else's body.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
far beyond inconvenience. I mean, this is a whole new world of sexual harassment, and I can't imagine how irreversible that
right,
psychological damage could be on a young woman involved. I don't think anyone should be able to deploy that technology at all in such
right.
a powerful and devastating way, even given how technology forward I am. And considering the activity of young folks online, I want to separate, my surprise with the disappointment in it. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. I'm very disappointed that it exists in that way.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, but anyway, the use case that I was trying to get to, that the initial one that prompted me to look into this episode, were incidents where hackers are using AI to generate audio of just regular people. So, we're the victims,
Yeah,
to
let's
extort
hear it.
money from their family members.
Unsurprising again, but any examples of this, I guess, in the news you came across?
Yeah, so one particular story that I came across from about a year ago was on CBS News, reported on a phone call that a mother received, and it was from her own 15-year-old daughter. And what her daughter said to her is, "Mom, these bad men have me. Help me, help me, help me." So, can you imagine how terrifying that would be for a mother to hear her own daughter saying those words? But the reality was that the woman's daughter was safe at home in her own bed. But her natural instinct would have been terror into, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to save her child.
Right.
Um, Looking into that, so there was a cybersecurity expert was quoted in the article that I found as saying that common software can recreate a person's voice after just 10 minutes of learning it. And I actually stumbled across other articles that said even less than that. So just a few minutes of audio, they can train.
Average length of a quick phone call, that's all it takes.
So we're lost because there's hours and hours of audio of us that are posted online. So
We're done. We're
um,
toast.
right. So, but other examples include like any example where people receive a phone call from, a lot of cases it's a family member, a teenage child, or I don't know, a vulnerable person, and they'll say something like they were just in a car accident, they're in some other kind of trouble and they need help, and this is just going to kind of evolve into, in some form or another, there's money is being changed hands. It's all about the
Yeah.
money.
Creating that sense of urgency is key in catching people off guard and just willing to resolve the issue immediately. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, technology, will become a threat when put into the hands of people who seek to cause harm, in this case, scammers. What can we do to protect ourselves?
So there's a few of them. The first one we already kind of talked a little bit about is they need a recording of your voice to train the model, even a short amount of it. So if you're not like you and I who have hours and hours of our audio that are out there, if you have audio recordings of yourself on social media, you should kind of limit those posts to just your friends or close friends, and just don't allow them to be accessible to just anyone on the internet. Um, another trick that they might try is just an unexpected phone call. So a tactic that they would use is call you and lure you into some sort of a phone conversation with a stranger, and then talk about it. Doesn't matter what they're talking about, but if they're recording your audio, they're capturing what they need to train an AI model. So if you find yourself talking to some stranger on the phone because they're, I don't know, whatever, if you're in a strange conversation, maybe you should think about not being in that conversation. Um, but the most significant one is establish some mechanism with your close family, so you can identify each other. And that could be like a code word that you use within your family to verify that you are who you are. Or the other thing is just establish it as a norm within your own family and social circles to verify each other's identity. And it doesn't have to be something really complicated like, two-factor authentication. I'm going to send you a code in your text or something like that. You can simply ask, like, what did we have for dinner last night? Or where did we go on Saturday? And, the person that you're dealing with isn't going to have the answer to that readily at hand. And, somebody might say, well, they could look that up on the internet, but they're not going to be able to look it up at conversational speed, right? So I would get used to that. And that's something that, my wife is very familiar with. When she asks me some of those strange, like, tell me the password for something, I'm like,
Yeah,
ooh, prove to me who you are.
yeah.
In a text conversation with my own wife. So,
Yeah, I imagine that, these tips can sound almost too simple to be true, but they really work. That code word practice is something that I share frequently with my friends and family too, not just for basic quick 5-minute phone calls or FaceTimes that are an hour and you, it's me the whole time, but where
right.
it's kind of on the line or seems suspicious, or it involves sharing personal information, passwords, the whole 9 yards. Additional verification is always helpful.
Mhm.
Um, even for those less advanced impersonation threats that we've covered in previous episodes.
Yeah. And I think you said that, like you just said, to be suspicious. And I think that's the key thing. You just, and I hate to tell people to do that. You always have to be skeptical, even of talking to, friends and family members. But you really need to.
Like, listen to your gut. Now that you know this stuff exists, like, I think your brain's going to add that check to say this is off. Could it be an impersonation
Yeah.
scam? Could it be, a fraudster? And you go down that list yourself. It should be automatic as long as you keep yourself exposed to these risks.
Yeah, and I'd say the main things to be looking for, like the typical characteristics of any of these kind of, they all fit into the social engineering attack, are that it's something that's unexpected. It tries to create a sense of urgency. In a lot of cases, it's going to try to avoid verifiability, but you can usually overcome that. And in pretty much every case, they're looking for something of value. And certainly, and I'll kind of say this over and over and over again, if you find yourself buying a gift card for any purpose whatsoever, then you're being scammed. So just gift cards are the mechanism of choice. So I think just applying reason in every situation. If you think that your child is safe at home in their bed, they probably are. If somebody calls you and it sounds like them and they've been kidnapped, it's that's less likely to be true. Um, so just kind of have that, use your common sense, take a deep breath and noodle it through before you make a rash decision about something. So
And know you can protect yourself through the tips we gave. um, and I mean,
yes.
the same, I assume, is true for consuming what could be deep fakes through your social media feeds, whatever, Facebook. Just don't let yourself be manipulated, during elections or on hot topics. Pause for a
Right.
moment.
Right. And like that's nothing new. There's a lot of people on all sides of any of these debates and issues that resort to lies and deception and manipulation. And so that's not new, but the deepfake technology is just kind of bringing it to a new level. So now, like we've talked about it here, if you're listening to this, you know what's possible and it's easy for people to do this. Just use your own common sense and skepticism, and I don't know, look out for yourself.
Well, I think we covered this one pretty well, even in the highs, the lows, everything in between what the stories are told. Sometimes, even the worst information is worth sharing to protect the next person, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
I think we covered it. So yeah, let's look forward to the next one.
excellent. Well, before we finish, I'll share that the information in this episode and throughout it is not of our own and not in any way affiliated with our employers or other organizations. These episodes are produced on our own time and are based on our own research and professional opinions.
See ya.
See ya.